So today we'll take a look at the new Wave Multiplier from Venom, which is very much inspired by the Doppler Wave Multiplier module, and it's great for turning a simple sound to something more complex. I added also the ideas from this video to the PDF of VCV tips and tricks I keep on updating. It's available on my Patreon, together with the patch files from this video and lots of other exclusive content like weekly sound design videos, various tutorials, and more. So the wave multiplier will take a simple waveform. In this case I have a triangle wave coming from the VCO unit. You can see we have here also dedicated mute buttons here on the module, so I can just unmute this triangle wave. And now it will create copies of this wave, sending them through processing that, depending on the incoming signal, it might fold the wave or just shift its phase. So I can unmute, for example, the first copy. Right, you can see already the result. Each copy has also built-in modulation, a built-in LFO, right, so we can add modulation. You can see already the movement. Right, we have also rate control for each of the copies, and we have also the global rate. Right, I can add another copy, again just unmute it, add some modulation. Already you can see what this module is all about. Let's add another one, and another one. Right, something like this. So we get something much more complex. Even we started just with a triangle wave. There's also lots of movement, and this works really nicely also as a bass drone. So I will take the triangle wave a few octaves down. Something like this. Right, add some chorus. I have here the electric ensemble. Right, add some chorus to it. Add filtering. Right, I have filter, modulated low pass filter. Right, soon enough we will add also some pitch variation, but this works nicely also with sequences. Right, here I have a sequence with a step sequencer plus from Cell sequencing, another VCO unit. Right, and this is already going through the wave multiplier, but for now it has no effect. We have here, if I zoom in a bit, we have a global depth control, right, that I can bring in the effect. Right, of course it has also a CV input, so I can also control this externally. Right, so again this works really nicely also to add some movement to sequences. Now what I will do, since I have here the sequencer with the step sequencer plus, I can use the same pitch information to drive the bass drone that we had before. I'm just sending this to a sample and hold. This will sample this pitch information, and then I'm sending this through a slew limiter to the bass. Right, so we have some movement. Now this works really nicely also polyphonically. Right, what I'm doing here, I'm using again the same pitch information, the same sequence, in this case with a shift register, and I have here 4 outputs. So I have 4 channels of polyphony, right? I have 4 note chords, and again I'm using here another sine wave from the VCO unit going through the wave multiplier, and the wave multiplier is fully polyphonic, so also the CV inputs are polyphonic. You can modulate each channel with its own signal, so we get basically modulated chords. We also get access to multiple outputs that we can use in various ways. So here I have a sequence with slips, again sequencing the VCO unit, a triangle wave, Right, now this is already going to the wave multiplier. right? But you can see I'm not using the main output or the global output. Instead, I will use the individual shifted outputs. You see, we have here shifted wave. We have an output for each of the shifted copies, right? And we can mix them in all sorts of ways. So for example, I will use the first pair or the first two outputs as a stereo voice, left and right. I have here the mixer also from Venom. Right, so already we have two outputs, panned hard left and hard right. And then I can use another output on another channel and then add panning modulation. Right, I have here the panning or pan expander of this mixer. I will just use an LFO. Right? So now we get also some space and movement in the stereo field. This is going here through a modulated filter, just for extra movement, right? So we can mix and match the outputs as we see fit, also create space in the stereo field. And we also have the pulse outputs from the internal comparators, right, from the internal processing. So here I have another example. I'm using all four of them. You can see mixing them, panning them in different ways, right, creating my own mix, right, instead of using the main output or global output. Also here, the input is just a sine wave, but you can see the result on the scope. And I will unmute this also so you can hear it. Right, so again, I'm mixing myself the pulse outputs, and you can see the modulation here. If I turn it off on all channels, the modulation, the internal modulation in this case is just basically pulse width modulation, right? So we get really lots of movement. And we even have access to the internal modulation, to the internal LFOs. We have here the 4 LFO outputs. Right, so in this example, again, I have just a sine wave going to the wave multiplier, and I'm using one LFO to modulate a bandpass filter and another LFO to modulate panning. Right, so we can even use the internal LFOs, and we can even bypass them with modulation of our choice. For example, I have here walk from Bog Audio, which is smooth random voltage. So now instead of the internal LFO, what will modulate this channel here will be walk. We still get the LFO from the output, but the modulation itself is now bypassed, and we get smooth random modulation here. We can also have stepped random modulation with sample and hold. And this even works nicely with audio rate modulation. I have here another VCO that I will use to modulate the third channel. Right, to add a bit more grit. These outputs are also quite useful for modulating things at audio rates. So here, for example, I have a drone with a VCO lab going through a low-pass filter and some chorus. Right, and I can use, for example, one of the pulse outputs to modulate the filter again at audio rates. Right, something like this. And I can even feedback modulate things. So for example, if now I modulate the VCO lab, and the VCO lab goes to the wave multiplier, and the wave multiplier will modulate the VCO lab, and so on and so forth, we can also create interesting results. So for example, I can use a shifted wave to modulate the shape of this sine wave that I'm using. Right, I can use another pulse output to modulate the level of the triangle wave. Right, and again, the result of this, the mix, is going to the wave multiplier, and the wave multiplier is modulating the VCO lab, so we get a nice feedback modulation here. can also use another output to modulate the phase of this triangle wave. Right, something like this. Right, so again, we can create really interesting results also by using these outputs for modulation. And we can even use the wave multiplier as a voice by itself without anything in the input. Right, so here I have one, nothing is connected to the input. If I solo this for a second, right, for now we just get clicks. But I can take the master here rate all the way up. Right, when already we get an oscillation. We can even offset this higher by using offset here in the volt per octave input. So I have here a rescale. Right, and maybe by 3 volts I will offset this up. This will even follow volt per octave if you want to sequence things. But now, again, since we have 4 channels, we can create a 4-note chord. So for example, the first one, I'm using a tuner here, is tuned to C. The second channel we can tune, let's say, to E flat. And then the third one, let's say, to G. And then the fourth one to B flat. Right? And we get a 4-note chord that we can again sequence with volt per octave, or we can use also the output level here as a VCA. So I have here a sequence with an envelope that I will use. Right, I have here, this is also going through a filter, so I have another envelope that I will use to control the filter. Right, this is all going through a delay, through echo. Right, so you can even use this again without anything at the input. You can even use this as a voice by itself. This of course works also really nicely for processing modulation. Right here I'm using an LFO, I'm sending an LFO through the wave multiplier. There are 2 things you have to keep in mind. First of all, turn off DC block, because otherwise it will not let the modulation through or the CV signals through. And you can also turn off oversampling, because you are not dealing with audio here, there is nothing to oversample. Right, and now as you can see, this is the result. If I take the wave multiplier all the way down, you can see we just get a triangle wave LFO. But again, with the effect of the wave multiplier, this LFO turns into something a bit more complex. I just have it modulating here a bandpass filter. Right, just as another layer. I have here also some drums from 4MS. And the bass also with kickall. I'm also sidechaining or ducking here this VCO Lab drone. I just have oppressor. For now it's bypassed. I can unbypass it, so we have it ducking to the kick drum. Right, and now I'm taking a copy of this bass, running it through the wave multiplier, another bandpass filter, again just for another layer. Right, and that was it. Of course, there's a lot more to explore with this module. I hope you will experiment with it some more. Again, consider joining us on Patreon and Discord for lots of extra content. Thank you for watching. Cheers.